Alright, we're back at it. We've got the piston cylinders sitting out. These are stroker pistons. If you look here on the box, it'll actually say that it's for a 2110cc motor, which means they're stroker. What makes them a stroker is these wrist pin holes are closer up to the oil ring. So this would normally be a little further down. That would be your stock piston, typical non-stroker piston. So of course these are all brand new out of the box. Come with brand new wrist pins, brand new wrist pin clips, your cylinders, your pistons, and of course all your rings. What we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and mark each cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4. That way I can keep track of everything in the order that I want it to go, and we'll go ahead and make sure the heads fit the jugs properly later. But that way it just helps make sure I match things up properly. It's just something I do. Now what we need to do right now is we need to go ahead and pull the rings off the pistons, get them set in the cylinder, and measure our gap. We want to make sure that those are not too close together, so when the engine heats up that we don't basically have the same problem as what happened before. I have a feeling that when they butt up against one another, it can actually cause that to expand, can break a ring, can break the gland. You'll have issues. So you want to make sure that you have the proper gap. So that's what we're going to go ahead and do real quick. Get those done, then we'll go ahead and start prepping everything, lubing everything, cleaning everything, then lubing everything, and go ahead and get this thing put together so the cylinders and pistons are done. So let's jump on that real quick. Alright, I like to use the piston ring pliers. These make it a little easier so you don't accidentally break a piston ring when you're trying to get it off of there. Sometimes easier said than done, but to me it just makes it easier. Now a lot of these too, there'll be your part number, words or whatever, that usually faces up on these pistons. Not always, but just verify that yours are put on properly so you put them back on the right way. Helps if I grab it properly. There we go. And just like that. And we'll go ahead and do the same thing. We'll pull the oil control ring off. Usually don't need the pliers for that. And then we'll go ahead, well, let me show you first real fast. So this is the second one. So I'll go ahead and get that in there. What I like to do is I'll use the piston to kind of set it. And that's kind of why I leave the oil control ring on for the time being. Now all we need to do is take a feeler gauge and figure out that gap. Now all you're going to do is take your feeler gauge, run it in there. That's minimum of 12 thousandths, so we're good. Let's jump to 14. Actually, that's it. That's 14 thousandths right there. So normally you want 14 to 18, roughly. Again, you know, maybe a boosted application or something like that's going to be a little different, but that's a nice slight drag on that right there at 14 thousandths. So that one's good. I'll go ahead and do the top ring real fast. And definitely be gentle. You know, you don't want to break a ring. And the reason I use the piston is you want to make sure it's squared up and not all sitting in there all caughty-wampus or whatever. Yep, top ring is too tight. So we're going to need to file that down. What is it? Let's drop down to 10. It's a very, very tight 10 thousandths. Alright, so they do make a special tool for this. And that special tool is actually going to sit there and grind your ring down. But what I usually do is kind of hold it flat. Especially in my situation, I don't need to hardly take any off at all. I'm just trying to get a thou or two. Make sure you deburr the edge a little bit. Make sure it's nice and smooth. Rinse and repeat. Almost there. Just a smidge more. It doesn't really take much at all. Just make sure you hold it flat. like like to wipe it off to make sure I don't have any burrs or anything right there. There we go. It's a nice loose 14. That's what we want. So now we just got to go ahead and do the cylinder or the oil rings, and we'll be done. And then times 3 more. There we go. We got everything done with the piston cylinders. And I've got them marked 1, 2, 3, 4. Just, you'll see why later. Went through and cleaned everything really well. You brake clean the daylights out of this, and you brake clean the daylights out of that. I know they come oiled, and people are going to tell you, but they're already oiled up and lubed and ready to install. Yeah, I like clean parts. So I brake cleaned the daylights out of them, and then wiped them down on the inside. And you still get stuff. Trust me, you want to clean your parts. All that machining stuff is still in there. It's easy enough to add oil back and pre-lube everything back up. Just clean your parts. So now we'll go ahead and remove the towel. We need to go ahead and check deck height without spacers. So I kept all the spacers together the way the previous builder had everything. So I want to check it, see where we're at, clean them up because they're still covered in the silicone or whatever he used. So we'll pre-check it, see where we're at compression wise, and then we'll get these cleaned up, measure how much he had, install a set, and see where we're at there. We'll just kind of take it from there. It's just kind of the steps in building an engine. So that's next. Oh, and one thing I did not check, or well, hold on, let me say that again. One thing I did not record is something that I do check. OCD maybe, I don't know. I actually weigh the pistons. And if I need to, I'll go in there and take a little material off somewhere to get them really close. My scale only does by like 1/2 gram. So I can usually get it within about 1/2 gram of total from one end to another. I do the same with the rods. Again, I didn't show that. I kind of just set up the scale here in the vise, you know, the scale here, and support one end in the vise, usually by a screwdriver or something sticking out. That way it lays kind of flat, and you weigh it, flip it, turn around, weigh it the other end. That way you're weighing it horizontal the way it's supposed to. And I just go and weigh them all and get them again within about 1/2 gram. Just little things to make sure things are as good as we can make it for not being in a machine shop. So let's go ahead and install one on one side, see where the deck height is. All right, we'll go ahead and mock up a cylinder now. That way we can go ahead and check deck height. I'm gonna go ahead and put on the inner side, this is cylinder 1. So you got cylinder 1 here, you got cylinder 2 here. You always want to make sure the little arrow is pointing towards the flywheel. And what we'll do is on the inside, because you got another cylinder sitting here, you want to put your C-clip. So I'm going to go, there's usually 2 sides to this, fight me, tell me I'm wrong. One side is kind of rounded, one side is kind of sharp. I like to put the sharp side on the outside, that way it really catches that lip and cannot pop out. Get yourself a decent little set of C-clip pliers. I like these, no idea where they came from. They got little nubs on the end, so it really grips those clips and keeps them a C-clip and not so much a Jesus clip. Why do people say Jesus clip? Because when they fly you go, oh Jesus. Trying to get my hand in the way so you can still see though. Now, one easy way to make sure that you've got it in the groove properly is if you take one end and rotate it, it should spin. Yeah, I'm not fully in the groove. So now it'll rotate around. Perfect. Doesn't really matter where that's orientated, in my opinion. So now we'll take a little bit of our dirty weight, some cleanish hands. Let's go ahead and just coat the inside of that cylinder. You don't want it dry, and remember we cleaned it to get all the manufacturing gunk off of that cylinder. You don't need much, just enough for a nice thin coat. And we'll do the same kind of on the rings a little bit. Coat those up some. Now I do not plan on taking this piston back out of the cylinder again, so I want to go ahead and orientate my rings. So again, this is cylinder 1. I always mark it at the top. Arrow goes to the flywheel. I like my oil control rings to point up, as you're going to get a little bit of pooling of oil on the bottom. Now with that pointing up, I'm going to take one ring and put it between 9 and 10 o'clock. Take your other ring, put it between, so I like to kind of run them, because you want them offset. I like to run mine about like that. Somewhere in that range, somewhere in that range. Now it's a matter of dropping it down in the cylinder, which I have a compression tool for that. Now they do make little ring compressors like this. The only downfall is my one broke, so that's my 83 to 87. 90.5 really makes it difficult, so we're gonna have to use the old school style. So basically we're just gonna take and then just crank her on down. When you're tapping it down, if you feel resistance and it not moving, stop. Because there's a good chance your ring is caught on your outside of your cylinder right there. There we go. So now we can get to our hole there for our wrist pin. So we'll throw a little oil on that, just a little bit. And we'll do the same to the end of our connecting rod. Throw just a little bit through that. So we got the keeper on the one side. Let's go throw it on and check deck height. All right, so we got our bushing here lubed up with some oil. That way everything spins nice. Go ahead and get that over closer to top dead center. There we go, that's right about there. All you do is slide it on. Again, this is mock-up. This is not final assembly. There we go, slid in. Now we just slide this on down. I'm just going to go with feeler gauges for this one. I know that's tight. I'll start with 10 val. Kind of rocking the pulley back and forth just to make sure we're up at top dead center. Yeah, I can just get a 30 in there. Like I was showing you guys before, another way you can check it is with dial caliper. You know, I'm right about 460 thousandths. So then just want to run that. Yeah, we're about 20 thousandths, about 25 thousandths deck. Way too tight. You need a minimum 40. So we know, well, we already know we need to run shims, but at least now I know what the starting point is. So we'll do the same thing on the other side just to verify. We'll be good. All right, we got our shims cleaned up. So he had two shims on there. Both of those together are about 95 thousandths. It's supposed to be a 60 and a 40, but they're always slightly under. So now we need to go ahead, pull this back off. You're not even looking. There we go. Pull this back off, verify everything, install the shims, go from there. We'll do the same thing again. We'll get our 460. That's where we need to be. Make sure we're top dead center. And we'll go ahead and drop this down. See where, oh, you're not looking again. You see now? Probably not. It's almost back to 60. So we're looking about, oh, nope, we're past. 115, almost 120. Wasn't sitting flush. We're looking about 120 thousandths. So let's go ahead and do the math real quick. All right, so we got all of our measurements. I went ahead and verified we have 115 thousandths deck. So let's go ahead and go to CB Performance real quick and check out their, see what we see. Engine bore is 90.5 millimeters, stroke is a 78.4, deck height is 0.115, combustion cc, we did that last video, 57 cc's. I want to check my compression. We're at 7.7. Actually, it's a 2017 cc because of the extra 0.4 stroke. So there we go. This is technically a 20.7 cc at 7.7 to 1 compression. And this cam calls for 7.5 to 8.25. That's what the W100 calls for, so we're definitely on the low side, which is good. It'll run a little cooler because it's in a bus. So I think we'll be perfect. All right, we got our cylinder 1 here. We've got the wrist pin out because we need to be able to silicone everything in place. I like using the Ultra Black. It's oil resistant gasket maker. So what you want to do is just verify that all your surfaces are clean of any oil, grease, anything of that nature. And you're going to want to go ahead and put a thin film on. That came out a bit fast. That's all right. I like to kind of even it out some. Like so. Now these are kind of indexed a little odd, so kind of got to make sure they go on properly. They line up with the grooves right here in the cylinder properly. Because if you have them offset, they won't really slide on there right. So those are good. Now we'll do the same. Nice little bead right there. These are still stuck together from when he had them together, so I didn't bother separating them. Normally, if you're running more than one shim, you'd want to silicone in between the shims. But these are stuck together, so no need on this set. Alright, so this one's done. Now we can go ahead and put our wrist pin in the proper side. We'll throw a little oil on that again. Now we'll go ahead and do cylinder 2. Again, just making sure everything's nice and clean. Nice little bead. Alright, now the others were all separated, so we'll do the same. We'll add, make sure that's lined up properly. Thin bead. Doesn't take much on in between, but you want to make sure you got a good seal. That requires just a super thin layer. And we'll throw on our second shim. Make sure that's lined up properly with the grooves. And then same thing. This one will actually get a little bit thicker seal. But still, it's not like you got to use half a tube per cylinder or anything. It's really not that much. Go ahead and open up our wrist pin. Add some oil to it. Nice and lubed up. And that just slid in nice. And that's why you put your wrist pin in last, because you can't really get the shims over the wrist pin. But you can still leave the cylinder in. And again, adding the cylinder in instead of putting the cylinder on the rod, this is just easier for me, the way I like to do things. I'll go ahead and throw a little oil on the other one that we've been using for mock-up on both sides. So now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to take cylinder 1, drop it down on, push our wrist pin through. Now we can go ahead and put the clip on that side. And again, you want the rough side facing out. And again, this is why I like these, because with a little nip on the end, a little whatever, makes it really difficult to drop them down in the case. Some people will actually put rags down here in the opening so they can't drop the C-clip down there, but I normally don't have an issue. And one thing you can do if you want is take and just make sure everything's seated. It's up to you. Do you. Yep, we're in. That thing's really snug. I'll go ahead and rotate it over for 2 to be up. And this is why you put the clip on the inside, because once you slide that back down on, you're not getting in there. There we go. Little tapper tapper. Just make sure she's home. C-clip. Rough side out. Should be good, but I'll give her a little tapper just to make sure. Give her a little rotate. Yep. She spins. Time to send this one home. Deflectors. Need those. They're kind of a pain on this side because of the case hardware. But went right in. Nice. Now for the controversy part, pushrod tubes. I like to get my head kind of set on. Now here's the controversy part. I don't put sealant on the O-rings or on the seals. I just give them a little oil. That's all I've ever done, and they seal just fine for me. Seam side always up. There's something else you can do to make it easier. Take a push rod and drop it down in there. It holds it in place. Sometimes I can do it and not have to do it, but wow, did that even make sense? Do it and not have to do it? It's almost like I'm too legit to quit. Make sure there's no dirt or anything on those. Alright, all lubed up. All the seams are facing up. I'll go ahead and start slowly working this down. Now I'll take push rods out. I like to take a 13mm deep wall on an extension and kind of sit there and center things up a little bit. You even see what I'm doing? Yeah, kind of. Okay. Good enough. Good enough. Now we'll go ahead and start putting our hardware on. Now again, it's one of those little things I like to do. Just a hair of silicone on the back side of the washers for inside the case or inside the heads. Again, very little, thin film. Just helps prevent an oil leak. Again, you get your washers nice and clean, no oil on them. A little brake clean in a rag or something. Thin film's all you need, does not take much. You know, people do love to overdo it with silicone, which I don't understand why, because you're not protecting things more, you're actually making things potentially worse by all that silicone going through your engine. That's why some people like the aviation sealant. I've never had good luck with it. Some people like the Cure-All or Honda Bond or Yama Bond or whatever. As you saw, I used the Yama Bond on the case. Same thing as Cure-All basically. And I use the Ultra Black on everything else. Now there is a certain process to torquing your heads. I'm just using this to run them down. There's a first pass and second pass procedure. Now I like to go in steps. So I'll do this first one at about 10 foot-pounds and we'll follow the same process. There we go. As you saw, I didn't really run them down far. I just started bringing them in. Alright, now we're going to go to the final torque setting and the crisscross applesauce type of pattern for final torque. So that final torque pattern looks like this. I'll start off here. And then we'll just double check it. That's why we double check. That one was, I'm getting just a smidge of turn. Since I got a little bit, I'll do it again. Good. Camera stopped recording once again. Go figure. Lost all the footage. Got push rod tubes in. Got the deflector tin in. So we got both sides done, and again I like to, where is it? I like to take 13 on extension, just try to make sure that it's lined up properly so we don't have any issues. And sometimes too those holes don't like to, they're slightly pinched in or something. So just make sure that everything is hunky-dory. All right, well, we're gonna take a break and then we're gonna jump on valve train. Make sure the valves are set properly. Rocker arm geometry. One thing I did not show that I did do is I do take the barrels and lap them to the cylinders just to make sure we get a nice even seal. I didn't show that this time. There's a few things I didn't show, but for the most part, you get it. You've seen me do it like a bazillion times. I did do it. Camera issues, what can I say? All right, break time, then valve geometry. Let's check it and see how close it is. Maybe perfect. This guy did a really good job on this engine, so it's probably right on the money. We'll still verify. All right, let's see how this goes this time with this camera. So we have the original shims in here. That's what he had in. Oh, there's two of them. There's two different shims. That's what he had in there to get the rocker geometry proper. So we'll go ahead and throw on we're on the 3/4 side, so we'll go ahead and throw on the 3/4 side. Alright, so I've got my little piece of angle iron on the exhaust studs, got the dial caliper set up, dial indicator. We're roughly zeroed. So now what we need to do is go ahead and rotate it over and get total lift. So that's 1, 2, 3, shaking, 4, maxing out right about 415. And this W100 cam should be anywhere between 415 and 421 total lift with the stock 1.1-to-1 rockers. So we'll go ahead and back that back off. We're at 0, so 415, divided by 2 because we want to check half lift. So 406 or 206, 207. So there's 1, 2, that's 5, that's 7. Now we'll go ahead and, all right, so we have it at half lift. So what I'm going to do to make it easier for you is we're going to go ahead and remove this out of the way, set it on the bench. So at half lift, that rocker should be sitting perfectly level between your push rod and your valve tip, and it's right there. So I want to say he did a fantastic job setting up valve geometry. So all we have to do is torque these down now to the proper torque specifications. This side's done, and then go ahead and button up the other side, adjust valves. All right, now it's time for distributor drive gear. You got pretty much everything together. You've got 2 shims that go down in the hole. So what I like to do is take some assembly lube, dribble it down in there. So what that does is gets along the shoulder where it sits and helps hold it in place. And I'll take a little bit, put them on the 2 shims. And that'll help hold them in place. Put them on your long screwdriver. Drop them down in. Kind of just run that around to make sure it's centered. There you go. Now as for your distributor gear itself, it's offset. You want the smaller side up top, and this little tool really makes it easy. You can do it without it, but I like to take this flat part of the side and line it up with that. So what you want to do is you want to drop it in like that. As it drops in, it'll rotate and go about flat. You want it, I like it kind of pointing right here. Some people like it pointing straight over. You know what? You do you. So as it goes down in there, since it doesn't really want to let go, rotate it and pull. Now, we'll see how close we were to the original. Drop our distributor in. All right, so I set it backwards. I apologize. That's how you want it to look right there. Let me get the light. So see how the half moon is on the bottom side, the smaller parts on the bottom side. And also make sure you put that spring back. That'll get you to drop right in. There we go. Dropped in. Just got to put the nut on there, snug that up a little bit. Put the cap on. We'll go ahead and take my pulley off. Put his pulley on, along with his front breastplate. And this will be about ready for him to pick up. Well, there we go. Pretty sure the camera gave up the ghost for the last time. I set in play and it never recorded. And then I hit stop to finish recording and it just said error. Anyway, there's other videos on how to set in play. I'll try to link one down below. You want it between 3 and 5 thousandths. This came in right about 4.5 thousandths, so we're good. I'm not gonna fight that little bit to make it perfect at 4. Just good luck. So this is done. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go ahead and let them know that everything's finished up. This is how it came to me. Assembled just like this as a long block. That's how it's going back to him. He's got all of his tins and the whole 9 yards, exhaust, carbs, yada, yada, yada. So this will be pretty much done. I'll try to remember to take you guys along with me when we go to fire it up for the first time, because I do want to verify oil pressure. I do want to verify, you know, make sure everything's tip-top shape. So I'll try to remember to bring you guys along for that. Not sure when it's going to be. I don't know. So anyway, I'm not an expert. I'm just a guy doing stuff in my garage, doing Volkswagen stuff. Volkswagen stuff. So thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it. Make sure you check out the links below. Lots of other great YouTube channels to follow, merch, stickers,
website, all kinds of good stuff. So I appreciate you, each and every one of you. Till the next time, be kind to one another and be good.